There is a truth men do not wish to hear, yet it governs every step of their lives. From birth, before a child even speaks, a mask is carved for him. It begins in the eyes of his parents, the demands of his teachers, the judgments of his peers. This is who you are, they say. This is what is acceptable. This is what will be praised. This is what will keep you safe. And so, without question, the mask is fastened. At first, the mask is a shield. It allows the child to walk among others without fear of rejection. It grants him approval, smiles, warmth, a place within the tribe. The mask is praised, rewarded, adorned, but in secret it begins to tighten. What once was a shield becomes a prison. The face behind it grows forgotten, the voice behind it silenced. The man begins to mistake the mask for himself. He says, "This is me, this is who I am." And yet, in the silent hours of the night, a whisper rises. "No, this is not me. Something is missing. Something is buried." Carl Jung, the one who peered deeper into the soul than most dared, spoke of this mask. He called it the persona. The word comes from the old theatre, the actor's mask, worn to project a role. But life itself is the stage, and men, without knowing, become the actors. They wear the persona not for a moment, not for a scene, but for decades, until they forget the actor and believe only the role. They wear the mask of the good son, the obedient citizen, the faithful believer, the loyal worker. They wear it so tightly that their skin grows around it, and still the whisper haunts them. You are disappearing. The disappearance is subtle. A man goes to work each day. He speaks the words expected of him. He laughs at the right jokes. He nods at the right orders. Yet inside, something has gone dark. He feels hollow, like an actor speaking lines he never chose. The joy he once knew as a child, wild, untamed, radiant, fades into the grey routine. He becomes efficient, productive, respectable, but also lifeless. He has become a mask that moves, a shadow of himself. Jung did not speak of this as a minor wound, but as a sickness of the soul. For the one who loses himself to the mask loses the very source of meaning. Life becomes a performance without a script, a play without truth. He may accumulate wealth, titles, recognition, but all of it rings hollow because it is built upon a self that is not truly his own. And one day, he looks in the mirror and feels a stranger staring back. This is the first prophecy of Jung. If you live only through the mask, you vanish. Not at once, but slowly, silently, piece by piece, until you are an echo of what you might have been. But why do men cling to the mask, even as it suffocates them? Because the mask offers safety. It protects them from the judgment of others. It spares them the pain of rejection. It hides their wounds, their flaws, their fears. To remove the mask is to stand naked before the world, vulnerable and exposed, and most men cannot bear that. They would rather disappear behind the mask than endure the terror of exposure. Yet, Jung declares, the path of wholeness requires the death of the mask. One must strip it away, even if the skin tears with it. One must risk rejection, misunderstanding, and loneliness. For only by removing the mask can the face beneath breathe again. Only then can the hidden self, the one buried, forgotten, exiled, return to life. But the removal of the mask does not reveal beauty alone. It reveals the shadow. This is Jung's second prophecy. Beneath the mask lies not only the true self, but also the rejected self, the shadow. What is the shadow? It is everything you have denied, everything you have cast into darkness, because the world told you it was unworthy. The anger you silenced, the desires you repressed, the fears you concealed, the cruelty you disowned, all of it lives in the shadow. It is not destroyed, only buried. And the more it is buried, the more it festers, the more it waits for the moment to rise. When you meet the shadow, you tremble, for it is not a stranger. It is you, the parts of you that you swore were not yours, the envy you condemned in others, the violence you feared in men, the lust you judged in silence. All of it speaks with your voice. And in that moment, you realize you are far darker than you imagined. Most flee from the shadow. They cling to the mask more tightly, painting it brighter, more virtuous, more holy, hoping to silence the darkness beneath. But Jung warns, the more you flee the shadow, the more power it gains. What you deny controls you. What you repress rules you from within. A man who claims he has no shadow becomes its slave. His anger bursts out in cruelty. His fear turns to cowardice. His envy poisons his love. He becomes the very thing he denies, but blind to it. Therefore, Jung commands, do not deny the shadow. Face it. Enter the darkness. Stare into the abyss, until you recognize yourself in it. For only then can you integrate it. The shadow, once faced, becomes strength. The anger becomes courage. The desire becomes passion. The fear becomes humility. The cruelty becomes discipline. The shadow is not the enemy, but the raw material of power. Yet this is no easy task. To face the shadow is to face death, the death of who you thought you were. The mask shatters, the lies dissolve, the false self burns. This is why Jung speaks of individuation not as comfort, but as fire. It is a path of pain, isolation, terror. Few walk it, for it demands everything. But those who do emerge, transformed. For the goal is not merely to remove the mask, nor merely to face the shadow. The goal is to become whole, to unite the light and the dark, the mask and the shadow, the conscious and the unconscious. The goal is individuation, the birth of the true self. And so the first stage is disappearance. The man who lives by the mask disappears into nothingness, but the one who dares to tear it away disappears into transformation. This is the choice. Remain safe, hollow, praised, but dead, or walk into the fire of the shadow and be reborn. This, Jung tells us, is the beginning. This is where the path opens, where the mask trembles, where the whisper grows into a roar. You are not yourself. You are vanishing. Will you awaken, or will you die behind the mask? The moment the mask falls, a man believes he will finally be free. He imagines sunlight breaking through, truth emerging, life becoming whole. But Jung warns, when the mask shatters, light does not pour in, darkness does. Behind the carefully constructed face lies a cavern, vast and echoing, filled with the forgotten and the forbidden. It is here the shadow waits. The shadow is not a ghost from another world. It is not an intruder. It is you, the pieces you refused to see, the desires you disowned, the instincts you called sinful. Think of a child scolded for his rage, his wildness, his hunger. He learns, these things are dangerous. These things make me unlovable. And so he buries them. He puts them away in a chest, locks it, hides the key. But the chest is not gone. It grows heavier with each year, filled with more banished parts of himself. By adulthood, he has forgotten it exists. Yet it waits, and the weight bends his soul. When the chest bursts, the shadow comes alive. It appears first in dreams. Jung studied dreams not as meaningless fragments, but as messengers from the unconscious. In dreams, the shadow walks beside you, sometimes as an enemy, sometimes as a stranger, sometimes as a beast. It chases you, frightens you, wrestles you. Jung says, this is the soul's way of saying, you have abandoned me, but I am still yours. Face me, but most men refuse. They wake from the dream and laugh it off. They turn back to the mask, pretending the chest is not cracking open. They say, I am good, I am kind, I am righteous. That darkness is not mine. Yet the more they deny, the more it erupts in their life. A man who believes he is gentle suddenly lashes out in cruelty. A man who claims he is humble grows secretly arrogant. A man who boasts of purity falls into hidden corruption. The shadow finds ways to emerge. Denial does not destroy it. It only blinds you to its grip. This is why Jung warns, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The shadow cannot be prayed away, cannot be ignored. Into silence cannot be destroyed by positive thinking. It must be faced. It must be brought into the light of awareness. And this is terrifying. For to face the shadow is to admit, I am not who I thought I was. I am capable of the very things I condemned in others. I carry within me cruelty, greed, lust, envy, hatred. This confession feels like death. The ego, the false self, dies when it admits its own darkness. The man who has lived his whole life as the good one must now admit he is not purely good. The one who has called himself holy must face his own corruption. The one who has prided himself on kindness must confront his hidden rage. It feels as though the ground crumbles beneath him, as though he is falling into nothingness. But Jung reveals the paradox. It is in this fall that the self begins to rise. For when you embrace the shadow, you discover not only darkness, but also power. Beneath the rage lies strength. Beneath the envy lies ambition. Beneath the lust lies vitality. Beneath the fear lies caution and humility. The shadow, when integrated, becomes the wellspring of life. Take anger, for example. Most are taught that anger is dangerous, shameful, destructive, so they bury it. But when anger is denied, it leaks out in passive aggression, bitterness, cruelty. Yet when anger is faced, when it is integrated, it becomes courage. It becomes the fire to defend the weak, to speak truth against lies, to say no when the world demands silence. The shadow of anger once brought into the light. The same is true of desire. Desire is often condemned, cast into the shadow. But without desire, there is no drive, no creativity, no love, no passion. The man who kills his desire kills his soul. Jung insists, you must not destroy desire, but integrate it. Desire, harnessed, becomes creativity, intimacy, vision. Even cruelty, once faced, becomes discipline. Fear becomes wisdom. Arrogance becomes confidence. The shadow is not the enemy, but raw material. Refined, it builds the true self. Ignored, it consumes you. This is why Jung compares individuation, the path of becoming whole, to alchemy. The old alchemists sought to turn lead into gold. Jung saw this as a symbol of the soul's work. The lead is the shadow, heavy, dark, unwanted. But through the fire of confrontation, it transforms into gold, strength, vitality, wisdom. Without the shadow, there is no gold. Without darkness, there is no wholeness. Yet the path is not easy. To confront the shadow is to wrestle with a beast. It will resist, it will deceive, it will whisper, "This is not me, this belongs to others, I am innocent." The ego will do anything to avoid the truth, but if you persist, if you endure the terror, something extraordinary happens. You begin to recognize yourself in the shadow, and here lies the greatest danger and the greatest opportunity. Some, upon facing the shadow, are consumed by it. They fall in love with the darkness, intoxicated by the power it offers. They abandon the light and become tyrants, predators, destroyers. Jung warned of this. He saw how men who deny the shadow project it onto others, calling enemies evil, while blind to their own evil, and he saw how those who embrace it without discipline become monsters, but those who endure, those who integrate, become whole. They are neither blinded by false purity nor consumed by raw darkness. They carry both. They are aware of their cruelty, yet choose compassion. They feel their rage, yet channel it into courage. They know their lust, yet harness it for intimacy and creativity. They are human, fully, dangerously, gloriously human. This, Jung says, is the second stage of transformation, to descend into the abyss, to wrestle the shadow, to bleed in the dark, and to emerge not pure, but whole. It is here the disappearance deepens. The man who clings to the mask disappears into hollowness. The man who faces the shadow disappears into death, only to be reborn. But the path does not end here. Beyond the shadow lies a deeper abyss, the self, vast and terrifying, calling him to surrender even more. The shadow is only the threshold. The true journey has just begun. If the shadow is the first great terror of the soul, then the archetypes are the second. The shadow is personal, born from your own denials, your own repressions, your own secrets. But the archetypes are not merely yours. They belong to all of humanity. They are the ancient patterns, the eternal images, the primal gods that live in every mind, whether we acknowledge them or not. Jung calls this realm the collective unconscious. Imagine the ocean. Each person is a wave, unique in shape, size, motion. But beneath every wave lies the same vast water, endless and ancient. The collective unconscious is that water. It holds within it forms that have existed for as long as humanity has dreamed. The mother, the father, the hero, the trickster, the wise old man, the child, the great beast, the great light. These are the archetypes, living patterns of the soul, shaping us from within. To meet the shadow is to meet what you have buried. To meet the archetypes is to meet what has always been there, before you even knew yourself. They emerge in myths, in fairy tales, in religions. They appear in dreams with strange familiarity, as if you have met them before, in another life, another world. Consider the hero. Every culture tells stories of a hero's journey, the one who leaves the familiar, confronts the unknown, slays the dragon, returns transformed. Why do such stories appear everywhere, across continents, across centuries? Because the hero lives inside us. Every soul longs to embark on the journey, to face the trial, to claim the treasure of transformation. Or, consider the Great Mother. She is nurturing, protective, life-giving, but she is also devouring, smothering, destructive. The mother archetype is dual, the womb and the tomb. She feeds, but she can also consume. Every human being carries within them this ambivalence toward the maternal, gratitude and fear, longing and dread. And then there is the trickster, the joker, the deceiver, the one who turns order into chaos and chaos into order. The trickster appears in myths as Hermes, Loki, Coyote, Raven. In our lives, he emerges when certainty collapses, when laughter cuts through solemnity, when irony reveals hidden truth. He is dangerous, but also liberating. These archetypes are not fantasies. They are not stories we invent. They are structures within the psyche, older than thought itself. And when a man ventures beyond the shadow, he begins to encounter them in force. Dreams become filled with gods and beasts. Synchronicities, those strange coincidences Jung spoke of, multiply, as if the world itself is speaking through. Symbols, life becomes mythic, charged with meaning, overflowing with images that seem both personal and universal. But this is not without danger, for just as the shadow can consume a man, so too can the archetypes. A man who identifies with the hero may grow arrogant, believing himself chosen, destined, invincible. A man who identifies with the great father may become tyrannical, ruling over others with iron certainty. A man swallowed by the trickster may fall into chaos, unable to distinguish truth from lies, play from destruction. Archetypes are powers, not toys. To encounter them is to encounter gods, and no man meets a god unchanged, and beyond all archetypes lies the greatest of them all, the self, not the self you think you are, not the ego, not the mask, not the collection of memories and ambitions. You call me, the self is larger, older, vaster. Jung calls it the totality of the psyche, both conscious and unconscious, both light and dark. It is the center and the circumference, the source and the goal. To meet the self is to realize that you are not the master of your own house. You are a fragment of something infinitely greater. This encounter is the most shattering of all. For the ego, this feels like annihilation. The man who has lived clinging to control now realizes he has none. The one who believed he was the author of his destiny now sees he is but a character in a story written by something far beyond him. The one who thought, I am this, hears the voice of the self saying, you are far more and far less than you imagined. Jung often described this encounter in symbolic terms: dreams of mandalas, visions of divine figures, experiences of overwhelming unity and terror. It is here that religion is born. Gods, myths, symbols, all are attempts to represent the overwhelming reality of the self. When Moses hears the voice from the burning bush declare, I am that I am, when mystics dissolve into oneness with the divine, when prophets tremble before visions too vast for words, these are encounters with the self, but the ego resists. It clings, it cries, I will not disappear, I will not surrender, yet surrender is inevitable. The self is greater. The man who resists too long risks madness. The psyche will tear itself apart if the ego refuses integration. This is why Jung insisted that individuation, the path toward wholeness, is not luxury, but necessity. To refuse the self is to remain broken, fragmented, enslaved by forces you cannot see. Yet to accept the self is to die, not a physical death, though it may feel like one, but the death of illusion, the death of the small I who thought it was king. And from this death comes rebirth. The man who surrenders to the self discovers a strange paradox. He does not vanish. He becomes real for the first time. The mask falls. The shadow is integrated. The archetypes are honored, not worshipped, and the self begins to shine through. The man is no longer merely himself. He is more he. He speaks with a voice not entirely his own, yet deeply authentic. He acts not only for his ego, but in harmony with the larger self. He becomes a vessel of the deeper order of the psyche, a servant of the great mystery that moves through all things. This is the third disappearance, the disappearance of the ego into the self, and it is the most terrifying of all. For while the mask's death feels like exposure, and the shadow's death feels like moral collapse, the ego's death feels like cosmic dissolution. To walk this path is to walk willingly into fire, knowing you cannot return the same, and yet, this is the only way to wholeness. To refuse is to remain trapped in endless repetition, haunted by the shadow, ruled by unconscious archetypes, enslaved by the mask. To accept is to step into the great current of life itself, to vanish into something greater, and in vanishing, to finally be found. The path is nearly complete, but not yet. For even after encountering the self, there remains the final task: to return to the world transformed, bearing the weight of this knowledge. To live not as a ghost hiding behind masks, nor as a beast enslaved by shadows, nor as a god intoxicated by archetypes, but as a whole human being, flawed, radiant, grounded in the mystery. This is where Jung's vision reaches its climax. Not escape from the world, but return to it. Not transcendence into heaven, but embodiment on earth. The journey ends where it began, in the ordinary, but now everything is changed. The journey of the soul is not escape. It is not meant to leave the world behind, to retreat into caves or vanish into clouds. Jung was clear on this. Individuation does not remove us from life, it roots us deeper in it. The one who has walked through mask, shadow, archetype, and self is not a saint who floats above the earth, but a human who now finally walks upon it with real weight. Think of the ancient myths. The hero never remains in the underworld. Orpheus must return. Odysseus must come home. Even Christ, after descending into death, rises and walks again among his disciples. The journey into the depths is never the end. The end is the return. To live in the world, but not as before. This is the hardest lesson of all. For many who taste the vastness of the self wish to remain dissolved, floating in the ocean of unity. They mistake the revelation for the destination. They confuse vision with completion. But Jung warns, to remain in that state is to abandon life. It is to dissolve the ego entirely, and with it, the possibility of human existence. We are not meant to remain gods. We are meant to become human, fully, consciously, whole, and so. After disappearance comes return. After annihilation comes embodiment. The task is no longer simply to see the shadow or to bow before the self, but to live each day carrying what has been revealed, to speak with honesty even when silence would be safer, to act with courage even when cowardice would be easier, to live in such a way that the outer life mirrors the inner truth. This is what Jung meant when he said, individuation is not to become perfect, but to become whole. Perfection is sterile. Wholeness is alive. Perfection seeks to erase flaws, to polish until nothing raw remains. Wholeness embraces flaw and strength alike, weaving them into a pattern that is uniquely one's own. The man who is whole does not pretend to be flawless. He no longer pretends at all. His very existence is truth. But what does such a life look like? First, it is a life of integration. The mask is no longer master. The shadow has been faced, acknowledged, woven into the self. Its energies, once destructive, now become fuel for creativity, vitality, authenticity. The archetypes no longer possess him as gods demanding worship. They move through him as powers, guiding, shaping, inspiring, but never enslaving. And the self, vast, mysterious, transcendent, now breathes through him, not as a force that crushes, but as a presence. That steadies. Second, it is a life of responsibility. To see the truth and remain silent is betrayal. To know the depth of the soul and live shallowly is cowardice. The individuated one bears weight, the weight of knowledge, the weight of responsibility, the weight of embodying what others cannot, yet face. This is why Jung compared individuation to destiny. Once glimpsed, it cannot be forgotten. To refuse it is to wither. To accept it is to carry a cross. Third, it is a life of service. Not service in the sense of blind obedience, but in the sense of living as a light for others. The one who has walked through fire carries fire within him. His presence alone ignites those around him. He does not need to preach. His life itself becomes prophecy. His actions, his authenticity, his very being, these become a mirror in which others glimpse their own masks, their own shadows, their own forgotten depths. But do not imagine this life is without suffering. To live authentically in a world addicted to masks is to stand alone. To speak truth in a culture addicted to lies is to invite scorn. To embody wholeness in a society that worships fragments is to live as a sign of contradiction. The individuated man becomes both a beacon and a target. His light draws, but it also threatens. His authenticity liberates, but it also unsettles. He will be misunderstood, resisted, even despised, yet he cannot turn back, for he has seen, and once the veil is lifted, it cannot be lowered again. He has touched the real, and nothing less will satisfy. This is why Jung spoke with such gravity about individuation. It is not a path for all. Many will not dare it. Many will cling to their masks, preferring comfort to truth, illusion to reality. Many will never meet their shadow, never face their gods, never bow before the self. And perhaps that is mercy, for the path is not gentle. It demands everything, but for those who cannot refuse the call, for those whose souls ache for wholeness, there is no other choice. They must walk it. They must vanish, die, descend, and return. They must become whole, no matter the cost. And when they do, the world itself shifts. For every soul that becomes whole, reality bends. Every lie trembles before the weight of one authentic life. Every system built on masks cracks when faced with one unveiled face. Individuation is not merely personal, it is cosmic. It is rebellion against the tyranny of illusion. It is prophecy lived out in flesh and blood. Jung believed the future of humanity depended on this. He saw the modern world crumbling beneath technology, ideology, mass movements, the crushing power of the collective. He saw men and women dissolving into conformity, losing themselves in identities handed to them by politics, by media, by culture, and he warned, only the individuated soul can resist. Only the whole human being can stand against the flood of unconsciousness sweeping the age. This is why individuation is not selfish, it is the opposite. To become whole is to become free, and the free soul becomes a fortress in a world of chaos. The individuated one carries within him a center that no storm can shake, and by his presence, others find their way. The path ends here, but it also begins here, for individuation is never finished. Wholeness is not a static state, but a living process. Each day the mask creeps back, each day the shadow whispers, each day the archetypes stir, Each day the ego tries again to enthrone itself. To live as whole is to live vigilantly, to walk each day with courage, to continually choose truth over illusion, integration over fragmentation. The journey is lifelong, but the soul that has seen cannot forget. The soul that has died and returned cannot be enslaved. The soul that has surrendered to the self walks forever with fire in its bones. This is the prophecy Jung left us, that the future belongs not to systems, not to machines, not to masks, but to the souls who dare to become whole. And if you would be one of them, then you must walk the path of disappearance. You must let the mask fall. You must embrace the shadow. You must confront the gods within. You must bow before the self. You must die so that you may live. And when you return, you will not be the same. You will be yourself for the first time. You will stand where others collapse. You will see where others are blind. You will live where others merely exist. You will be whole. And in your wholeness, the world itself will find hope. For the prophecy is not for the future. It is for now, and the time is already upon us.